Hello, and welcome to Pride and Prejudice. Thank you all so much for joining us today on our internet adventure, exploring this play together. I just want to say that I have had an amazing time working with this group of young artists who we originally thought we were going to be able to meet in person, and due to the state of the world, ended up shifting to Zoom uh, uh, for adventure and for safety and for all of those things in between. And I think that it did not stop us from creating something amazing. I think it even sets a fire to create and explore this text in a different way. And I'm really, really proud of everyone coming together, whether into an ensemble. I think for me, one of the biggest parts about building theater is building ensemble and coming together as a team. And even though we're all in different places, this group of young artists was able to figure out what ensemble meant to them, whether it was figuring out a phrase to alert others that they are muted when they are saying their lines, or helping to cover tech glitches. Whatever it's been, it has been a really beautiful exploration and thing to watch and be a part of. So thank you to all of my actors and young artists, and thank you to Shauna for the opportunity to do this. And with that, I will stop talking and please enjoy the show.
It is a truth, universally acknowledged,
that
A.
Single.
Man.
In possession of.
A good.
Fortune.
Is.
In.
Need. Of.
A.
Wife.
My dear Mr. Bennet, Netherfield Hall is occupied at last. I just saw Lady Lucas and she told me all about it. Don't you want to know who has taken it?
You want to tell me? I have no objection to hearing it.
Lady Lucas says that it is taken by a Mr. Bingley, a single man of large fortune. What a fine thing for our girls.
How can that affect them?
Why, he can marry one of them, of course.
This has intended settling here.
Oh, you delight in vexing me. He will very likely fall in love with one of them. If you will only visit him.
I will send him a note, of which to give of my hearty consent of his man of which he chooses of our girls, and I'll make sure to throw in a good word for Lizzie.
Lizzie is not a bit better than the rest. Not half so handsome as Jane.
Mama!
Nor so good-humored as Lydia.
Oh, Mama.
Do stop coughing so, Kitty.
They are all very silly and ignorant, except for Mary, a young lady of little learning.
A little learning is a dangerous thing.
Find out, Mary. I hope Mr. Bingley likes the hat, Lizzie.
We are not to know what Mr. Bingley likes, as we are not to visit. Do stop coughing so, Kitty, for heaven's sake!
I do not cough for my own amusement.
Still, coughing may annoy Mr. Bingley.
I am sick of Mr. Bingley.
I am sorry to hear that. If I'd have known as early this morning, I certainly would not have called on him.
Oh, Mr. Bennet, if I can but see one of my girls settled with Mr. Bingley at Netherfield, and all the others equally well married, I shall have nothing to wish for. When is Sir William's ball, Lizzie?
In 12 days.
Oh, I wish it were now.
Days pass.
And the Bennet family arrives at
Sir William's ball.
The sisters discover Mr. Bingley across the room. He is accompanied by his sister,
Caroline, and another handsome gentleman.
Mr. Darcy.
The dancing begins. Mr. Bingley is dancing with
Charlotte Lucas.
Mr. Darcy.
And Caroline do not partake.
As this dance,
Mr. Bingley sees
Jane.
for the first time,
And Jane sees him.
and they dance
And laugh.
and dance.
Mr. Darcy.
And Caroline watch in curiosity.
And concern.
Charlotte's parents watch with disappointment.
and Mrs. Bennet watches with loud enthusiasm.
Elizabeth smiles, watching her sister so happy.
The music ends. Miss Bennet, I wonder if you would do me the honor of dancing with me again this evening.
I will, Mr. Bingley.
Oh, but not yet, I pray. If my brother is to dance with you twice in one evening, we must be friends first.
My sister, Miss Caroline Bingley. Caroline, Miss Jane Bennet.
Come walk with me, Miss Bennet. I know we shall be great friends. I must learn all about you.
Come, Darcy. I hate to see you standing about in this stupid manner. You shall dance.
I shall not. Your sister is otherwise occupied, and it would be a punishment to dance with any of the other women here.
Oh, she's the most beautiful creature I ever beheld. But there is one of her sisters, Elizabeth, who is very pretty.
She's tolerable. Not nearly handsome enough to tempt me.
Elizabeth, I am so happy. Mr. Bingley is just what a young man ought to be. Good-humored, lively, and such good manners.
He is also handsome and rich, which a young man also ought to be if he possibly can.
Charlotte Lucas, you began the evening well. You were Mr. Bingley's first choice.
But he seemed to like his second better.
You mean Jane? Yes. It does seem as though he admires her. Indeed, I quite believe he does.
But poor Eliza, to be only just tolerable.
Mr. Darcy is such a disagreeable man that it would be a misfortune to be liked by him.
A misfortune many women might seek.
Mm-hmm.
That is true, and I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine.
Pride is a very common failing, I believe. By all that I've ever read, I am convinced that human nature is particularly susceptible to it.
Mr. Bingley likes your sister, Eliza, but he may never do more than like her if she does not help him on.
Charlotte, she has known him only 5 minutes.
So much the better. It is better to know as little as possible about the defects of the person you are to marry.
Mr. Bingley, may I introduce my sister, Miss Elizabeth Bennet?
Miss Elizabeth, is not this ball delightful? I never saw one so beautiful.
But now that you are settled at Netherfield, Mr. Bingley, you have the opportunity to surpass it. You must give the next ball. Mr. Bingley, what does Mr. Darcy mean by listening to our conversation?
That is a question which Mr. Darcy alone can answer.
Did you not think, Mr. Darcy, that I expressed myself uncommonly well just now, teasing Mr. Bingley to give us another ball at Netherfield?
You expressed yourself with great energy, but dancing is a subject which always makes a lady energetic.
Mr. Darcy, I have always considered dancing to be one of the ornaments of civilized society.
It is also a vogue among the less polished societies of the world. Every fool can dance.
My dear Miss Bennet, what are you just standing about here for? Mr. Darcy, you cannot refuse to take the floor with so beautiful a partner.
I have not the least intention of dancing. Good day, Mr. Darcy.
I can guess the subject of your reverie.
I should imagine not.
You are considering how dreadful it
You're mistaken. I was meditating on the pleasure which a pair of fine eyes in the face of a pretty woman can bestow. Caroline?
Why, Mr. Bingley, don't you think you should ask Jane to dance? Oh, Mr. Bingley, you're so quiet. Would you please speak up?
Mr. Bingley, it would be my pleasure to dance with you for the last dance of the evening.
Thank you.
ball ends.
And they return home.
Another day.
I hope, my dear, you've ordered a good deal of dinner today, because I've been accepted an addition to our family party.
It is Mr. Bingley, I am sure. Why, Jane, you never dropped a word of this, you sly thing.
It is not Mr. Bingley. It a distant cousin I have never seen in my life.
Mr. Collins.
No!
Yes, Mr. Collins, who is against my will to inherit this house. Mr. Collins, when I am dead, may turn you out onto the road as soon as he pleases.
Oh, my dear, pray do not speak of that odious man. I do think it is the hardest thing in the world that your estate should be willed away from your own children.
The youth from home and hearth sent forth into wilderness to wander. Wordsworth.
But my dear, listen to his letter.
My dear sir, I have been recently ordained as a clergyman and have been so fortunate as to be distinguished by the patronage of Lady Catherine de Bourgh, who has appointed me pastor of a parish in Kent, where I endeavour to demean myself with respect towards her ladyship and to promote the blessings of peace. So I hope you'll accept my proffered olive branch. I am concerned at being the means of injuring your amiable daughters, and I assure you of my readiness to make one of them some amends.
Oh!
I cannot guess how he means to make one of us amends.
I imagine your mother finds it less difficult than you do, Jane.
There is something very pompous in his style. Can he be a sensible man, sir?
No, my dear Lizzie, I think not. I have a reason to believe him to be quite the reverse. I'm impatient to see him.
I propose myself the satisfaction of waiting on you and your family today.
Ah, welcome to our home, Mr. Collins, Mrs. Bennet, Mrs. Bennet, Elizabeth, Mary, Lydia, Catherine.
I have heard much of your daughter's beauty, but fame has fallen short of the truth. I'm sure you will see them all well disposed of in marriage.
Else they will be destitute. Things are settled so oddly.
Mr. Collins, I understand that you're very fortunate in your patroness to Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Lady Catherine, oh, Mr. Bennet, never in my life have I experienced such condescension as I have witnessed with Lady Catherine de Bourgh. She has approved both the sermons I have preached before her.
Very good.
She made not the smallest objection to my leaving my parish to visit you, my relations.
Yes, be gone.
She has advised me to marry as soon as I can.
Mr. Collins is staring at Jane?
Mr. Collins, you must marry. Let her be an active, useful person, able to make a small income go a good way.
Well, a man cannot choose better than one of my younger girls.
Mama.
Mama.
My eldest girl, I must just hint, is likely to soon be engaged.
Mama!
Ah, well, Mr. Collins moves his gaze from Jane to Elizabeth.
Mr. Collins, I long to exhibit you to the neighborhood, and may I beg of you to come here to the ball tomorrow?
Papa?
It is not beneath the dignity of a clergyman. It's been given by Mr. Bingley, who has invited all the ladies and gentlemen of our town, including the officers' regiment stationed here.
Ooh.
I am so far from objecting that I take this opportunity of soliciting your hand, Miss Elizabeth, for the first dance.
There arrive at the ball.
Mr. Collins leads Elizabeth
Awkwardly.
Pompously,
through a
wretched dance.
While Jane dances with
Mr. Bingley. And Lydia dances with
Mr. Wickham, both laughing.
at Elizabeth.
All the while, Mr. Darcy dances with Caroline Bingley.
Oh, Lizzie, this is Mr. Wickham. He is an officer. Let him dance with you next and rescue you from that horrible Mr. Collins. I have got so many officers here to dance with.
It would be an honor, Miss Bennet.
I would be happy to dance with you, Mr. Wickham.
I see Mr. Darcy here.
Yes, he seems to be Mr. Bingley's particular friend. He's a man of very large property, I understand.
Yes, Pemberley is a noble estate, a sheer 10,000 a year. I've been connected with his family since my infancy.
I am surprised.
My father cared for Pemberley, the Darcy estate. Are you much acquainted with Mr. Darcy?
As much as I ever wish to be. I think him very disagreeable.
Alas, his faults go much deeper. Mr. Darcy's father was my godfather, and in his will he left instructions that I was to be appointed pastor at one of his parishes. When the elder Mr. Darcy died, however, his son, the present Mr. Darcy, appointed someone else. So I was forced to join the army.
Good heavens! How could Mr. Darcy disregard his father's own will?
There was enough informality in the wills to give me no hope from the law. He said that I had forfeited all claim to the church by extravagance, carelessness, in short, anything he could devise. He was jealous for his father's affection for me, and he hates me.
This is quite shocking. To disinherit his father's godson? I wonder that he should not have been too proud to be dishonest.
It is strange.
They pass a portrait of Lady Catherine de Bourgh and her daughter.
Is that not a portrait of Lady Catherine de Bourgh?
It is, and that is her daughter, Miss de Bourgh.
But why should it hang here?
Lady Catherine de Bourgh is Mr. Darcy's aunt.
I am astonished. She is also the patroness of my cousin, Mr. Collins.
Her daughter will have a very large fortune, and the family has arranged that she and Mr. Darcy will marry and unite the two estates.
Oh, really? Mr. Darcy is to marry his cousin? Poor Miss Bingley.
Oh, come now, Mr. Wickham. Did you come to a ball just to talk? Do you not want to ask me to dance again?
Ah, may I have the honor?
Dear Eliza, do come talk to me.
Charlotte, I have been speaking with the most agreeable man, saying the most disagreeable things about Mr. Darcy.
Has he any other recommendations?
He does indeed. He rescued me from my cousin, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins?
Just there, a clergyman who believes that because he is to inherit our home, that he also has a right to me as his wife. The moment Mr. Wickham released me from him was ecstasy.
Miss Bennet, may I have your hand in the next dance?
What? Yes.
Thank you.
What have I just said?
Eliza, do not allow your fancy for Wickham to lead you to be unpleasant to a man of 10 times his consequence.
Is not this a pleasant gavotte, Mr. Darcy?
Quite pleasant, yes.
It is your turn to say something now, Mr. Darcy. I talked about the dance. Now you ought to make some kind of remark.
Whatever you wish me to say, I assure you will be said.
Very well. That reply will do for the present. Now we may be silent.
Do you talk by rule then, while you are dancing?
If necessary, one must speak a little, you know. Perhaps you've noticed that I have been forming a new acquaintance.
Mr. Wickham is blessed with the ability to make friends easily. Whether or not he keeps them is another matter.
He has lost your friendship and will suffer for that all his life.
I do not forgive easily. My resentment, once created, is permanent.
And you never allow yourself to be blinded by prejudice?
I do not. May I ask to what these questions tend?
I'm trying to make out a faithful portrait of your character.
I ask Miss Bennet that you not try to sketch my character at the moment. I do not think it would reflect well on either of us.
Lady Lucas, I believe that Jane will soon be married to Mr. Bingley.
Mama!
You speak with great animation.
Just think of the advantages of the match.
I beg you, Mother, lower your voice.
Do be quiet, Lizzie. I am speaking to Lady Lucas.
Okay, Mr. Darcy can hear you.
Lizzie, what is Mr. Darcy to me? Pray that I should be afraid of him? Lady Lucas, just think. Jane's marrying Mr. Bingley would throw my younger daughters in the way of other rich young men.
For heaven's sake, madam, speak lower. Why offend Mr. Darcy? Mr. Bingley is his closest friend.
Oh, Mama, it isn't fair. Kitty and I haven't had the chance to dance with half of the officers in the room yet, and Mary says she's going to sing.
Mary, sing? Oh, Papa.
That'll do extremely well, Mary. You have to let us for long enough.
Ah, my fair cousin, I've been seeking you, hoping to prevail upon you to stand up with me again.
No, I do not intend dancing anymore. Perhaps I could introduce you to any other young lady in the room.
No, I am perfectly indifferent to dancing. My only desire is to recommend myself to you, accompanying you in whatever activities you choose to endeavor, until this delightful evening is entirely completed. The next day. Madam, may I solicit the honor of a private audience with your fair daughter Elizabeth sometime during the course of the morning?
Oh, yes, of course. Certainly, I am sure Lizzie will be very, very happy, and I am sure she will have no objection.
Dear madam, do not go. I beg you will not go. Mr. Collins must excuse me. I am going away myself.
No nonsense, Lizzie. I desire you will stay where you are. Lizzie, I desire you will stay here and listen to Mr. Collins.
Believe me, my dear Elizabeth, that your modesty only adds to your perfections. I know that you are too poor to bring any dowry worth speaking of, but I shall never reproach you on it once we are married. Lady Catherine has advised me.
You are too hasty, sir. You forget that I have made no answer. I am very sensible as to the honor of your proposal, but I must decline.
I know that it is usual with young ladies to reject at first the man they secretly mean to accept. Therefore, I hope to lead you to the altar before long.
Sir, your hope is unfounded. I would not risk my happiness on the chance of being asked a second time.
This encouragement, I shall expect a more favorable answer in the future.
Encouragement? How can I express my refusal in a way that will convince you that it is one?
My dear cousin, your family has little money. It is by no means certain that you will ever receive another offer of marriage. Therefore, I attribute your rejection to your wish of increasing my love by suspense, as is the usual practice with elegant females.
Sir, do not consider me now as an elegant female, but as a rational creature speaking the truth. My answer is no.
You are uniformly charming.
Mr. Collins, Lizzie shall be brought to reason. She is a headstrong, foolish girl.
If she is really headstrong and foolish, she would not make a very desirable wife.
Mr. Bennett, you come immediately! Mr. Bennett, you must make Jane marry Mr. Collins. Lizzie declares that she will not have Mr. Collins. And Mr. Collins begins to say that he will not have Lizzie.
Then what am I to do? It seems to be a hopeless business.
Speak to Lizzie about it yourself. Tell her that you insist upon her marrying him.
Let her be called. She shall hear my...
Lizzie!
Child, I understand that Mr. Collins has made you an offer of marriage, and this offer of marriage you have refused.
I have, sir.
Your mother insists upon you accepting it. Is it not so, Mrs. Bennet?
Yes, or I will never see her again.
An unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. You may become a stranger to your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do.
Oh, thank you.
Is Eliza at home? I was walking to town and wondered.
Oh, Charlotte, I am glad you are come. There is such fun here. Lizzie has refused Mr. Collins. He is so vexed.
Is he?
Miss Lucas, you must show compassion. Lizzie is your special friend, after all. Persuade her to accept Mr. Collins. For nobody on my side! Nobody! I am cruelly abused!
Charlotte!
There she comes, looking as unconcerned as may be. But I tell you what, Miss Lizzie, I am sure I do not know who will maintain you when your father is dead. I will never speak to you again.
Mr. Collins, could I persuade you to accompany me to town?
I would be delighted.
Oh, Charlotte, thank you. He would else be stuck here with us. I am more obliged to you than I can express.
It is quite a satisfaction to me to be useful.
Jane? Jane, what is it?
This is from Caroline Bingley. She and Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley have all left Netherfield for London.
And have no intention of returning.
Read this.
Charles wishes me to convey his regret that he could not say farewell to any of his new acquaintances before we left.
Is it not clear that I am only one among his new acquaintances?
It is clear only that Caroline Bingley wishes you to believe so. Had Mr. Darcy shown half as much affection for her as Mr. Bingley has for you, she would have ordered her wedding gown.
Caroline could never willfully deceive anyone, and surely she could not influence her brother to such a great extent.
Perhaps not. But there is one who could. One so consumed by pride that he thinks no one good enough for himself or even his friends.
No. I must have mistaken his affection. At least the heir has hurt no one but myself.
You are too good, Jane, too trusting. The more I learn of the world, the less I am satisfied with it.
So, Lizzie, your sister is crossed in love. I congratulate her. The girl likes to be crossed in love a little now and then. When is your turn to come? Let Wickham be your man. He is a pleasant fellow and will judge your credibility.
Thank you, sir, but a less agreeable man would satisfy me. We must not all expect Jane's good fortune. Charlotte! Where is Mr. Collins?
My dear Eliza, there is something I must tell you. Mr. Collins has made me a proposal of marriage.
You as well. Have you ever known such a conceited, pompous, ridiculous, silly... Ugh.
We are engaged.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Charlotte, and I wish you all imaginable happiness.
I am not romantic, you know. I never was. I ask only a comfortable home, and I am convinced that my chance of happiness with him is as fair as most people's.
Undoubtedly.
We will be settled in Kent. Will you come and see me early in the new year?
But you are always welcome here.
I am not likely to leave Kent for some time. Promise me you will come.
I cannot refuse you.
The Bennet family Christmas party
is underway.
Elizabeth
and Wickham
are under the mistletoe.
Oh, sister, I do not blame Jane, for Jane would have gotten Mr. Bingley if she could. But Lizzie, my dear sister, the Lucases have a daughter married before I have. The Lucases will have this house.
I am sorry for Jane, but these things happen so often. A young man easily falls in love with a pretty girl, and when accident separates them, easily forgets her.
But we do not suffer by accident. The interference of his sister and his friend has separated Mr. Bingley from Jane.
Elizabeth turns.
To return to Mr. Wickham.
My dear niece, you are too sensible a girl to fall in love merely because you are warned against it. Mr. Wickham is poor.
Yes, because of Mr. Darcy, that odious man. As to my sensibilities, how can I promise to be wiser in love than so many of my fellow creatures?
Lizzie, I think a change of scene might do you good. I wonder if you would accompany your Uncle Gardiner and myself on holiday to the Lake Country.
Oh, my dear aunt, what delight, what felicity! Adieu to romance and disappointment. What are men to rocks and mountains? I do have one other visit to pay first. I have promised Charlotte Collins to visit her in the Kent. Elizabeth arrives in Kent to visit Charlotte.
Eliza!
Oh, Mrs. Collins!
It is such a pleasure to see you, Eliza.
And me to see you, Charlotte.
Welcome, Miss Bennet, to my humble abode. I shall presently inquire the health of all your family and lead a tour of both house and garden. However, before all this must come the news. We have been invited to spend the evening at the residence of Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Indeed.
Yes, together with her daughter and her nephew, Mr. Darcy.
Later, at Lady Catherine's.
Are any of your younger sisters out in society, Miss Bennet?
Yes, ma'am. All.
All? What, all 5 out at once? Very odd. The younger ones out before the elder are married. Your younger sisters must be very young.
Lydia is not yet 16. Perhaps she is too young to be much in company, but it would be very hard upon younger sisters if they were denied their share of society.
You give your opinion very decidedly for so young a person. What is your age?
With 3 younger sisters grown up, your ladyship can hardly expect me to admit it.
What? You cannot be more than 20, I am sure. Therefore, you need not conceal your age.
I am not yet 21.
Lady Catherine moves towards her daughter.
Elizabeth takes the opportunity to move away.
She finds herself face to face with Mr. Darcy.
How very suddenly you all left Netherfield last November, Mr. Darcy. I trust you left Mr. Bingley and his sister well in London.
Perfectly so. Thank you.
And I understand that Mr. Bingley will not return to Netherfield.
Miss Bennet, in vain I have struggled. It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed. I must tell you how ardently I admire and love you. My admiration for you has overcome all reasonable objection to a union with a family so far below my own rank, reputation, and behavior. I trust that my declaration of intent will now be rewarded with your hand. In marriage.
Mr. Darcy, let me assure you, you are completely safe from any union with me and my inferior family.
Might I be informed why I'm rejected with no attempt at civility?
I might as well inquire why you choose to disparage my family in your proposal.
So your pride was hurt by my honesty. You expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your relations?
Mr. Darcy, the manner of your declaration only spared me the concern which I might have felt in refusing you. Do you think that any consideration would tempt me to accept the man who divided Jane and Mr. Bingley from each other?
You accuse me of that.
I do. And your character has also been revealed in your treatment of Mr. Wickham.
You take an eager interest in that gentleman.
You defied your father's wishes and reduced him to poverty. You are the last man in the world whom I could ever marry.
You've said quite enough, madam. I'm sorry for having taken up so much of your time.
Elizabeth discovers her sisters. Oh, Lydia, you're so quiet. Do speak up.
Is not this an agreeable surprise, Lizzie?
We are come to see you home in the carriage, Lizzie.
They get in the carriage.
How nicely we are all crammed in. Have you had any flirting? I was in great hopes you would have got a husband before you came back.
Jane will be quite an old maid soon, I declare. She's almost 23.
Lord! How ashamed I should be of not being married before 23. Lord! How I should like to be married before any of you, and then I would chaperone you about to all the balls. Lydia nudges Kitty.
Ow. Lizzie, you must help us. The regiment has left Meryton.
Have they indeed?
They are going to Brighton by the sea.
And I do so want Papa to take us all there for the summer.
Mamma would like to go too. Only think what a miserable summer else we shall have. What are we to do with ourselves?
Papa is so disagreeable.
A little sea bathing would be wonderful.
So you must speak to Papa because... Oh, I have got some news for you. It is about a certain person we all used to like.
Used to like?
It is about Wickham. He has been paying court to Mary King.
Oh, Lizzie, you are quite thrown over.
Well, you were a great fool for going away, if you liked him. I am sure he does not like Mary King. Who could care about such a nasty little freckled thing?
He cares about her £10,000. He never noticed her at all until her grandfather died, making her an heiress, and then she grew much more beautiful somehow.
But Wickham is gone with the regiment to Brighton, and Mary King is stuck here, like us. Do help convince Papa to go. You could get him back.
£10,000. Well, even handsome young men must have something to live on.
Oh, Lizzie, you were not in love at all, were you?
I suppose not.
Still, won't you help convince Father to go to Brighton?
Or at least me, as I am older.
Oh. Here we are.
We are glad you come back, Lizzie.
Oh, Mary, will you not help us convince Papa to take us to Brighton? Officers! Dancing!
Far be it from me, dear sister, to deprecate such pleasures. They are doubtless congenial with the generality of female minds, but I must confess they hold no charms for me. I infinitely prefer the company of a book.
Lizzie, there's a letter here for you from Mr. Darcy?
Be not alarmed, madam. This letter contains no repetition of those sentiments that were so disgusting to you. 2 offenses you laid in my charge. The first was that I detached Mr. Bingley from your sister. The other, that I ruined Mr. Wickham. The first charge, it is true. I saw Mr. Bingley's partiality for Miss Bennet was beyond what I had ever witnessed in him.
It is a certain event. Only the date is to be decided.
Your sister I also watched, but from the serenity of her countenance, I remained convinced she was not especially attached to him. I was, with some difficulty, able to convince Mr. Bingley of your sister's indifference. From your statements, I can conclude that I must have been in error, but it was an honest mistake. I opposed the engagement not because of any difference in rank or wealth between your family and Mr. Bingley's. Rather, it was a total lack of propriety displayed by your mother and 3 younger sisters. Pardon me. It pains me to offend you, but you must see why I thought the connection unadvisable. Now, with all respect to Mr. Wickham, George Wickham's manners were always engaging, but his lack of principle could not escape my observation as we grew up together. My excellent father died about 5 years ago, and in his will recommended to me that should Mr. Wickham ever enter the church, I should appoint him pastor when the position became vacant. He also left him
£1,000.
Mr. Wickham went through £1,000 in 6 months and informed me.
I have resolved against going to the church and desire, in lieu of that appointment, more money. I wish to study law.
I knew that Mr. Wickham ought not to be a clergyman.
I resign all claim to assistance in the church.
He accepted in return
£3,000.
Now free from all restraint, Mr. Wickham's life was a life of idleness and dissipation. For 3 years I heard little of him, until the church position became vacant once more, and he applied to me again to be appointed.
My circumstances are exceedingly bad. I found the law a most unprofitable study. I wish to be ordained as a clergyman.
You can hardly blame me for refusing to comply with this entreaty. He has ever since been violent in his abuse of me. I will only add, may God bless you, Fitzwilliam Darcy.
Ooh. An invitation to Brighton. For me.
But what about me?
Oh, congratulate me, Mother. I do.
I cannot see why I should not be invited. I am 2 years older.
May I go, Papa? Please?
I can see we shall have no peace if you do not.
Father, do you not worry about Lydia? On her own in Brighton with the regiment?
Lydia will never rest till she exposed herself to ridicule in some public place. If things get worse, we can lock her up for the rest of her life.
Papa?
Oh, my love, you and Jane will be respected, despite having a couple of, or may I say, the very silly sisters. As you'll go to the lake country with your aunt and Uncle Gardner to improve your mind, Lydia will go to Brighton to degrade herself.
Dear Lizzie, due to the press of Mr. Gardner's business, our pleasure tour must be curtailed and it will not be possible to visit the lake country. We have made alternate plans.
To visit the finest country house and grounds in England.
I have made discreet inquiries and learned that the master of the house, whom I know you dislike, will be away. You must guess that I am thinking of the Darcy estate.
Pemberley.
Very finely proportioned.
It must have 100 rooms.
At least, but it is not pretentious. It seems a part of the landscape. Quite splendid. Don't you agree, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Oh, would it not be something to be mistress of such a place?
Would the ladies and gentlemen like to see the house?
I understand your master is not at home?
Nay, none of the family are here at present, but he always likes for people to see the house.
Lizzie, look at this.
Oh, that's bad Georgie. Georgie Wickham, son of the late Master Stewart. I'm afraid he turned out very wild. Now this is my master, and very like him.
It is a handsome face, but Lizzie, you can tell us whether it is like him or not.
Does this young lady know Mr. Darcy?
A little.
And do you not think him a very handsome gentleman, ma'am?
Yes, very handsome.
Is your master much at Pemberley in the course of the year?
Not as much as I could wish, sir.
If your master were to marry, you might see more of him.
Yes, sir, but I do not know who is good enough for him.
Indeed.
If I were to go through the world, I could not meet with a better man. He was always the sweetest tempered, most generous-hearted boy in the world.
Miss Bennet!
Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy, we weren't expecting you. Mrs. Reynolds leaves to make tea.
I hope that your family is well.
Perfectly so. I thank you.
Miss Bennet, you do me the honor of introducing me to your friends.
Certainly, my uncle and aunt, Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner of Cheapside.
Mr. Gardiner?
Mr. Darcy?
Miss Gardiner?
Mr. Darcy?
You have a fine trout stream running through your garden, Mr. Darcy.
Are you a keen fisherman?
Why, Mr. Darcy, though I am seldom able to indulge the taste, I am very fond of fishing.
You must take a few trout from my stream. I will lend you the tackle and point out all the best places.
How very kind, sir. That would be splendid. Mr.
And Mrs. Gardiner?
Move to look at the river.
I certainly admire the beauty of this place, Mr. Darcy. It is beautiful.
Thank you.
Mr. Darcy, I wish you to know that I had been assured of your absence before I came here.
Yes, business with my steward took me to Pemberley unexpectedly.
I received your letter, Mr. Darcy.
Did you? Miss Bennet?
I did, Mr. Darcy.
Ah, good. I am glad you received my letter.
It seems, Mr. Darcy, that between us there is an embargo on every subject. Mr. Bingley.
I apologize for intruding. I don't know if Darcy mentioned I had accompanied him, but I felt I must pay my respects.
How is your sister, Mr. Bingley?
Your sister? Oh, my sister. She is well. She's in London. It has been quite some time, Miss Elizabeth, since I last saw you. Not since the 26th of November, when we were all dancing together at Netherfield.
I am pleased to find your memory so exact.
Are all your sisters at home? Are they all well?
They were all perfectly well when I left, though Lydia has gone to Brighton, where the regiment is now encamped.
And the rest of your sisters? Are they at home? Are they well?
Quite well, Mr. Bingley.
Good. It is a great pleasure to see you again and to hear that your family is well. Excuse me.
Miss Elizabeth, I'd like to do what I can towards raising the embargo between us.
Pardon, sir, but there's an express for Miss Bennet, sent over from the hotel in town. Urgent.
Oh, where is my uncle? I have not a moment to lose.
Good God, what is the matter? I will not detain you a moment, but let me go get Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner. You are not well enough.
No, I'm only distressed. This is from Jane. It confirms the very character you gave Wickham in your letter, and in a dreadful way. Wickham has run away with Lydia. She has no money, no connections, nothing that can tempt him to marry her. She is lost forever.
I'm shocked, but is it certain? Absolutely certain.
They left Brighton together on Sunday night and were traced almost to London.
I would to heaven that I could offer consolation for your distress.
We must go. Make my farewells to Mr. Bingley. Conceal the unhappy truth as long as possible. I must return to my family.
Lizzie, it is good to have you home.
Yes, I'm sure it is, but I know not what your father is doing at home. Who is to go and fight Wickham and make him marry her?
Mama, you know that the Gardiners have gone to London where their connections make it far more likely that they will have success in rescuing Lydia than Papa.
I at least had a sympathy of my relation to console me. Read this, Lizzie. It is from Mr. Collins.
My dear sir, I feel myself called upon by our relationship to condole you in your present distress. The death of your daughter would have been a blessing in comparison. Let me advise you to throw off your unworthy child from your affections forever and leave her to reap the fruits of her own heinous offense.
Oh!
Oh, Papa, what news? What news? Have you heard from my uncle?
I have.
My dear brother-in-law, at last I am able to send you some tidings of my niece. They have been found together. I have seen them both.
Then they are married.
They are not married, nor did Mr. Wickham have any such intention. But he will marry her if you assure your daughter her share of the £5,000 provided to her and her sisters after your decease, and to allow her £100 a year during your life. I have agreed to these terms on your behalf. Mr. Wickham is being transferred to a regiment in the north, and he and Lydia will pay their respects to you on their way.
He will marry her.
Must they marry? He is such a man.
Yes. He must marry. There's nothing else to be done.
The terms, I suppose, must be complied with.
Complied with? I'm only ashamed of his asking of so little.
Wickham?
Your uncle, Gardiner, depend upon it. Wickham, who has asked a great deal more. There are three things I want to know. How much money your uncle has given Wickham? How can he afford it? And how am I to pay him back?
Money? My uncle, what do you mean, sir?
I mean that no man in his senses married Lydia for 100 a year during my life and £1,000 when I am gone. Even Wickham's gambling debts amount to more than that.
And a small sum could not do this.
No, Wickham's a scoundrel, but he's not a fool. I can only imagine he'd marry Lydia for less than £10,000.
£10,000? How is such a sum to be repaid?
I do not know.
May we take my uncle's letter to read it to Mamma?
Take whatever you like and get away.
My dear Lydia, this is delightful news indeed. Oh, I must give the good news to Lady Lucas. Oh, how well it sounds.
Mrs. Wickham. The young bride arrives home.
Mr. Wickham follows behind his wife, accompanied by the Gardiners.
Mr. Wickham?
Mr. Bennet.
Oh, you must all congratulate me. When I went away, I had no idea of being married when I came back, though I thought it would be great fun if I was.
But my dear Lydia, I don't at all like your going such a way off now. Must it be so?
Lord, yes. My sisters must come up and visit us. I dare say there will be balls, and I shall find husbands for you all.
I thank you for my share of the favor, but I do not particularly like your way of getting husbands.
Don't go, Lizzie. I must give you an account of my wedding. Do you not want to hear how it went off?
I think the less said on the subject, the better.
But I must tell you. It was all to be so hush-hush, but I shall burst if I tell nobody at all. Uncle and Aunt Gardner were horrid unpleasant all the time. They talked and argued and signed papers. There was no end of it. It looked as if the wedding would never happen. And then Mr. Darcy came and it was all settled.
Mr. Darcy?
Oh, yes. But gracious me, I quite forgot. That was to be a secret. I promised them so faithfully.
My dear aunt, can you tell me what was Mr. Darcy doing at Lydia's wedding?
Lizzie, do you think we have the money to clear Mr. Wickham's debts, settle things with his regiment, and to provide enough over that to induce him to do the right thing by Lydia?
Mr. Darcy?
It was done by him alone.
But why?
Perhaps you can guess.
My dear, dear Lydia, when shall we meet again?
Oh, Lord, I don't know.
Write to me often, my dear.
But married women have never time for writing. My sisters may write to me. They will now be stuck in this house with nothing else to do.
One day passes, maybe two, since Lydia left with her new husband. Or maybe it's more. The flowers are blooming. Or maybe we've gone backwards, for here we find ourselves back at the beginning.
My dear Mr. Bennet, have you heard? Netherfield Hall is to be occupied again! I just saw Lady Lucas to give her all the good news about Lydia, and she told me all about it. Don't you want to know who will be moving in?
Mr. Bingley, a single man of large fortune. What a fine thing for our girls.
Yes, Mr. Bingley is returned! He is returned! You will wait on him, of course.
No. You promised me if I went to see him, you have to marry one of my daughters. And will not be sent to the fool's end again. He knows where he lives. Lizzie, this is another letter from Mr. Collins. I congratulate you on the upon conquest.
From Mr. Collins, and what more can he have to say?
Your daughter Elizabeth, it is presumed by many, will not long bear the name of Bennet.
Are you not aware, Lizzie, whom you ought to marry? But it comes out.
But let me warn you that we have reason to imagine that his aunt, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, does not look on the match with a friendly eye.
Mr. Darcy, you see, is your fiancé. Mr. Darcy, who has never looked at a woman but to see a fault, and has probably never looked at you in his life. Are you not diverted?
Oh, yes, pray read on.
She has declared,
I will never give my consent to so disgraceful a match.
I thought it my duty to inform my cousin that she and her noble admirer may cancel their plans immediately.
Lizzie, it seems as if you did not enjoy it.
Oh, no, I am excessively diverted.
Mamma, Mr. Bingley is coming here. Look, he is coming here to the house.
Oh, my dear Jane, quick, hurry down. Mr. Bingley has come. He has come at last. Make haste, make haste.
Jane?
I feel perfectly easy. I know my own strength. It will be publicly seen that on both sides we meet only as common and indifferent acquaintance.
Yes, very indifferent indeed.
My dear Lizzie, you cannot think me so weak as to be in danger now.
Oh, I think you are in very great danger of seeing him as much in love with you as ever.
I shall enjoy his conversation as an agreeable and a sensible young man without having a wish beyond that. Lizzie, do not smile.
You are very cruel. You will not let me smile and yet are provoking me to it every moment.
It is a long time, Mr. Bingley, since you went away.
It is, Mrs. Bennet.
A great many changes in the neighborhood. Charlotte Lucas is married and settled, and one of my own daughters, Lydia. Well, I suppose you've heard of it.
I have. May I offer my congratulations?
What is the matter, Mamma? What do you keep winking at me for? What am I to do?
Nothing, child, nothing. I did not wink at you. Come here, my love. I wish to speak with you. Lizzie, my dear, I wish to speak with you as well.
Miss Bennet, perhaps you would walk in the park with me?
Yes, I would.
Mamma, someone else is coming. In a carriage. Oh, it is an old lady.
I do not know her. Do you, Lizzie?
I do. Good afternoon, Lady Catherine.
Lady Catherine de Bourgh!
I hope you are well, Miss Bennet. That lady, I suppose, is your mother.
She is.
And that, I suppose, is one of your sisters.
Yes, ma'am. She is my youngest girl but one. They offer you some refreshment, Lady Catherine.
No, I did not come here to eat. Miss Bennet, I will take a walk on your lawn if you will favor me with your company.
Go, my dear, but stay out of the way of Jane and Mr. Bingley.
I am sure you are aware, Miss Bennet, of the reason for my journey hither.
Indeed, you are mistaken, madam. I am not.
Miss Bennet, however insincere you may choose to be, you will not find me so. I am known for my frankness. I have heard that you will soon be engaged to my own nephew, Mr. Darcy. Oh, I know it must be a scandalous falsehood. I came to warn you against it.
If you believed it impossible, why take the trouble of coming?
To insist upon having such a report universally contradicted. Will you here and now declare this report untrue? Has my nephew made you an offer of marriage?
I do not pretend to possess equal frankness with your ladyship. You may ask questions which I shall choose not to answer.
Miss Bennet, I am the nearest relation he has in the world, and am entitled to know his concerns.
But you are not entitled to know mine.
Mr. Darcy is to be engaged to my daughter. Now, what have you to say?
If he is, then how could he possibly make an offer to me?
The engagement between them is of a peculiar kind. From their infancy, they have been intended for each other.
I have heard that. But what is that to me? I shall certainly not be kept from marrying your nephew by knowing that you wish him to marry your daughter.
Do not expect to be noticed by his family or friends. You will be slighted, censured, and despised by everyone connected with him. I will never mention your name.
That is a heavy misfortune.
Tell me once and for all, are you engaged to him?
I am not.
And will you promise me never to enter into such an engagement?
I will make no such promise.
I know all about your younger sister's infamous elopement. Is the son of a steward to be Mr. Darcy's brother?
Lady Catherine, you have insulted me by every possible method. I must beg you to depart.
I take no leave of you, Miss Bennet. I send no compliments to your mother. You deserve no such courtesy. I am most seriously displeased.
Lady Catherine storms off.
As Jane runs up to Elizabeth.
Jane?
'Tis too much, by far too much. I do not deserve it. Oh, why is not everybody as happy? I must go instantly to mother. He has gone to father already. Oh, Lizzie, how shall I bear so much happiness?
Where's your sister?
With my mother upstairs. She will be down in a moment, I dare say.
Oh, my dear Jane, I always said it must be so. I knew you cannot be so beautiful for nothing. Oh, you are the best child there ever was.
Jane, I congratulate you. I have no doubt that you're doing very well together.
I must petition you, my sister, for use of the library at Netherfield. Once you are there settled.
Yes.
Library? Oh, Jane, think of the balls you will be able to give. Do say you will give at least 3 a year.
Yes. Oh, Lizzie, if I could but see you was happy. If there were such another man for you.
No, no. Perhaps if I have very good luck, I may meet with another Mr. Collins in time.
There is another gentleman, Mamma. Who can it be? La, it looks just like that man that was with Bingley before. Mr. What's his name? That tall, proud man.
Mr. Darcy? Well, any friend of Mr. Bingley's will always be welcome here. But I must say, I hate the very sight of him.
Elizabeth opens the door.
Miss Elizabeth, may I speak with you? Alone?
Everyone?
Else?
Withdraws.
In.
Astonishment!
Mr. Darcy, I must thank you for your kindness to my poor sister.
I'm sorry you were informed of that.
Lydia's thoughtlessness betrayed to me that you had been concerned. Let me thank you in the name of all my family.
If you thank me, let it be for yourself alone. The wish of giving you happiness led me on. Miss Bennet, I come from speaking with my aunt. Her report gives me hope. Hope that if your feelings are still what they were, please tell me so at once. My wishes and affections are unchanged, but one word from you will silence me on this subject forever.
That word I shall never speak. My emotions, I fear, will not allow me to speak fluently, but my sentiments have undergone so material a change that
Dearest, loveliest Elizabeth, I have never felt such happiness before. You cannot expect sense of a man in love, but for warmth of feeling, I assure you, I have no equal. Will you marry me?
Yes.
They
kiss.
Good gracious Lord! Bless me. Only think, Mr. Darcy. Who would have thought it? Oh, my sweetest Lizzie, how rich and how great you will be. Oh, my dear. Pray, apologize for me having disliked him so much before. Such a charming man. 3 daughters married. 10,000 a year. Oh, Lord, what will become of me? I shall go distracted.